ready to go.
Welcome back to the Solutions Manual podcast.
We're growing.
Yeah.
Yes, we have 150 regular listeners right
Cool.
now.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Went above 100 before we even noticed. And we also know that every episode is listened on average by at least 1,600 people.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Right? Even if they don't regularly subscribe. So again, thank you very much for your time. It's much appreciated and gives us a lot of encouragement and a lot of belief and a lot of motivation to continue doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
We recently put polls out on LinkedIn asking, what are the biggest obstacles to your professional growth?
Yes.
And so far, poll is still open, but so far we got some interesting answers. And there are 3 leading answers among our polls. In first place for the biggest obstacle is too many competing priorities.
Yes, or failure to prioritize what matters.
Then we have fear, anxiety, and self-judgment as another what's stopping you from advancing in your professional life. And third, that we're going to talk about today, is a lack of a support system.
Yes. So today, support system. And during the next 2 episodes, we'll cover both the fears and anxiety, how this might be stopping you from achieving what you need or want, and prioritization and how to apply your resources to things that matter. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So what is a support system? When people are, when you think about who's in your corner, personal or professional life, because even though we've asked about what prevents you from growing or advancing professionally, you can't discount all the support that you need from your friends, your family, other groups, and at work. So what do you think we even need?
So maybe let's start first with what are the typical things that people assume or believe are needed, is this type of support they need or support that they need to progress in the workplace. And typically when you ask people that question, you're going to hear an answer that is, I need a mentor or a coach or a sponsor. I need a support from my employer, or I need a support from my team or my peer group, right? So let's just maybe start with mentorship and sponsorship first. And then we talk about the employer, your working environment, your colleagues, and try to dispel some myths as well and misconceptions that people often have in with regard to those.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So maybe first let's define the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. I think that sometimes people get those two confused. And so mentors and coaches, they will provide you with guidance, feedback, wisdom that they have acquired while working in similar environments. And their role is typically to help you understand both the organizational or workplace dynamics that you might have. They can help you understand and navigate the politics. They can help you identify your growth areas, help you to look at yourself, get some more self-awareness. And they typically can help you to rapidly accelerate your career because they can lead you to open yourself up and to understand certain things that otherwise would take you years to apply, right? So this is like a catalyst of your workplace development. And we know that mentors or coaches, they can be provided by your workplace, or you can try to find one yourself. And we're going to talk about this distinction as well, because it's important, right? Very often the people that are assigned by your workplace, their role is not necessarily to be only focused on your best interest.
Right.
This is very often an employer-provided service that is partially at least designed to be a retention tool or a service that it's offered to you to keep you also in a workplace, right?
And they provide insights back to the employer confidentially.
They might, right?
They typically do.
Yes, they typically do, and it's not an uncommon practice, right? So you're going to get a feedback, or this company provided coach or mentor opinion about you and your potential back to the employer, and that can or cannot be good
helpful
for your future career, right? But it's often mistaken as a valuable type of personal development.
Yes.
Right?
Another point on the mentor is people also wrongly assume sometimes that they will automatically get mentorship from their immediate manager, from their boss. While that can be true, that's
if you're
rare.
lucky.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that also is something to be cultivated if that is the dynamic that you need in your team.
There's also sponsorship, which is slightly different, right? Sponsors would be, let's say, like a step further. There will be someone more senior in your workplace who would be advocating openly for your advancement and kind of opening you the doors to certain opportunities or careers that otherwise wouldn't be available to you.
Yeah.
And we know that from a certain point of your advancement in any organization, like the closer you get to the higher levels, the vast majority of opportunities are only available to you through that route, through that door. Yes, which is direct consequence of playing certain political games or engaging in certain political games within the organization. Right. So sponsors, yes, sponsors are important, but it's just another way of saying, well, you need to have someone who will help you open the door. And if you mistakenly assume that you can get there through your hard work or competence only, you will be very, very disappointed.
Or if you assume that that your teammates or that your boss or manager will automatically advocate for you and give you that sponsorship, that's also it's your responsibility to make sure that you have the people in your corner in the right way.
Yes. And those are things that you need to proactively build. We know from the research from the Center of Talent and Innovation that was, I think the latest report was from 2020, but they were doing this for much longer. They consistently show that individuals who do not have a mentor or a sponsor rarely move beyond mid-level roles in any organization, regardless of their technical competence. Right? So I think that's an important thing for people to understand, because they often feel they hit the glass ceiling. They try to get more competence. They try to learn more, but it's just simply barking up the wrong tree. It's not how it works.
Right.
And which I think we're going to talk a little bit more about organizations in general as we move forward, right? So, okay, so these are the mentors and sponsors. What about your support that people often think they get from their team or from their peers? Because I think there are a lot of misconceptions here as well.
I think there's more human nature that takes over, and it tends to be, at least in corporate environment, it becomes adversarial, right? Everybody in theory is competing for the next role.
Correct.
And that's okay. That's part of working in that environment.
That's part of the corporate game.
But that means that the expectation someone has for support from teammates or colleagues is maybe misplaced, or those expectations need to be checked. Yeah, it's not always reasonable to rely on your immediate teammates for any sort of to be in your primary support system.
A good way you can think about any organization as a triangle, right? When there's one chief executive or a boss on the top, and on average, on every level in this pyramid, an average manager in an average corporation is approximately 10 direct reports reporting into him, which means that for every advancement in an organization, you need to outcompete 10 other people. And on the bottom level, on the bottom of that triangle, the pool of people is very large. So when you're starting in your career, it is typically enough to simply perform better to outcompete other people. But roughly from that mid-level that we talked about, which is where most people hit the glass ceiling, your competition are the people that it becomes your peer group, the people that you work with are actively competing with you for the next role in that organization. And you just simply need to understand the nature of that game. And if you're assuming that these are people who have your best interest at heart, you will be disappointed the higher you climb the organizational ladder, whether you like it or not. And I think that realizing that fact and consciously understanding whether this is an environment that you want to be in, or if that's the game you want to play, is important.
Yeah.
Right? You just need to realize that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I might reframe some of the way of thinking about the support system in general, and then things that people might ask themselves when they look at their team and just the organization that they work in and as a whole. So if we think about how you would want to feel in your support system, so you need to feel that you are like, you know what the structure is. Like, you have some structural support. You know what it takes to get to the next level. You know what the limitations are. You know what all the available opportunities might be on paper, right? Or what types of work or jobs or roles your position you're qualified for based on your experience and credentials. So you need some people in your support system to be able to, you can rely on for objective, like, you need to feel that you are up to date on where you go. And that's one. So that's like more of you feel confident and knowledgeable of where you are with your given skills and what it would take to get to another level. One. Two would be, you want to feel that you have people who will challenge you, but not in a combative or in a combative way, whether directly or behind your back, right? So you need to feel that the support system you have, you can share your thoughts, share your ideas, challenge your thinking, and give you actual feedback on that, and not have it feel that you're being questioned in the wrong way. So that's like more of the strategic part, the strategic support. I want to go for this role. I want to go for this other job. I'm going to change my career. And ask questions and with those people that can ask you back.
Yes.
And then the last thing would be just the emotional support and the mentor that you might want or need, or collective team that gives you not just emotional support in the way that, I feel bad about this, I need someone to help me feel better. It's not that. It's, do you have a mentor or a sponsor who you can share your ideas, and they can say to you whether your emotions are playing a bigger role in your decision making for your career advancement than you realize.
Yes.
So that would be, to me and maybe others, the most effective mentor or type of. So for people, I would ask, if we think about just the support system we're thinking about at work, mentors, sponsors, teammates, do they offer the structural support? Do you know what's going on across the organization? And do you know that to be true? 2, are they providing strategic support, challenging your thinking, helping you always build what you need to build? And 3, are they offering you emotional support that you need to be able to advance?
And I think at this point, it should be very clear that if you really think about this, especially if you're mid-level and upwards in an organization, sharing your thoughts, fears, vulnerabilities is not necessarily a great idea if you do that with people you're competing against.
No.
Right? Because unfortunately, the reality is that a lot of people will use this against you. So you need to be clever about how you approach this and how you think about this. And I think it's a great way to summarize, right? You need emotional support, and you need this more instrumental support. So it's just, and when it comes to emotional support, it's not a pat on the back and someone who validates what you feel. It's actually the opposite. It's someone who will safely challenge you without putting you or exposing you at risk of either retaliation or,
or blocking
your advancement opportunities in a proactive way. But again, not but validating your feelings, because that actually does you disservice rather than push you forward, right? So those conversations are typically uncomfortable, but they allow you to move forward in your career. We know that from occupational health data, actually, that medical records collected in workplaces, that a lack of the appropriate support system, or assuming that your support system comes directly from the employer or your teammates, leads to measurable impact on your health, right? It increases your cortisol level. I mean, why wouldn't it, right? I mean, you try to be, somebody tells you, oh, you have to be vulnerable at workplace, show your vulnerability. Yeah, great. You're just exposing your card to everyone in the organization who competes with you. And then you're surprised, why are you hitting a glass ceiling and everyone gets promoted and not you? Well, it's not because the workplace is unfair. It's simply because you're not willing to realize how the game is being played. So your cortisol level goes up, right? Your likelihood of burnout increases, your job satisfaction drops, right? Your chronic distress starts to become a thing. You become disengaged. That has a negative impact on your health. And we also know that from the people we work with, the higher up you climb, the more likely you are to be in poor health, right? People often in senior roles, they neglect themselves, take poor care of their health. They're often obese. They often use, they smoke, they drink, they use other substances to help themselves survive. They often neglect their mental health and well-being. They're just in poor health as a direct consequence of that's happening. There's a reason why CEOs die younger quite often than other people, especially in high-paced environments, right? It's just simply putting the wrong emphasis in the wrong place. So, the lower resilience due to the lack of support system is a thing.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of that comes to understanding what is the nature of the game that you're playing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's a great point.
I think when we also talk about networks or support system in a workplace, one of the things that will prevent or hinder your advancement, that is somehow related, it's the limited networking opportunities you might have in a workplace. Because we talked about this access to certain openings that are very rarely advertised at a certain level. Not everybody gets invited to high value projects, right? And those things matter. Not every person has an in-depth insight or view or is privileged to know what are the actual company strategy is. And those things are instrumental in making the right career progression possible.
Yes.
And we also know from research that there are certain groups that are typically most affected by the three things that we've covered so far. It's typically first-generation professionals. It's women. It's people who are migrants, so people who are working in a country that wasn't their place of birth. And it's everyone who works remotely or is a contractor. Right? Those people will typically have, because of cultural or other reasons, will have difficulty in advancing their career due to the lack of the appropriate structure and support system. Some of this is simply related to human nature. Others are related to being isolated from where the game is being played. And I think that before we move on further and to the career and then later discuss the kind of a personal support that you also need in life, in your personal life, it's critical to understand that you cannot rely on that support system to be provided to you.
No.
This is something that you have to proactively create and build yourself.
Yes.
And you need to put your time, energy, and money into making that happen, because it will not come from your employer.
If you are interested in your advancing or growing your career.
Yes. If you're interested in developing a career in a corporation, right? Yes. The rules would be slightly different if you have your own business, right? Yes.
Yeah, so don't assume and don't wait. There are plenty of things that you can do. Create your own support system that will actually work for you.
That's it.
And work for them too.
That's it. And that's the key. I think that's the key message. And we often read, you need to have these soft skills that matter, and which is partially true, right? There are some certain skills that you should be developing. But when it comes to soft skills, the ones that seem to give you the highest advantage is related to your ability to receive meaningful feedback in a workplace. It's conflict resolution. And it's personal confidence or building personal authority. Those three matter much more than any other soft skill that you can acquire. And those are also the 3 that are typically most neglected and what people don't pay attention to.
Yeah.
They believe that their authority or confidence will come with a job title. They often let's say they often ask for feedback that is not actually feedback, it's just a validation, because that whether they need this to prove something to their manager or just make themselves feel better. And just conflict resolution more broadly as an ability to find a common understanding and ground with the people you're playing the game with.
Yes.
Right? That's and to be honest, most of the other soft skills in reality don't really matter that much, despite people believing that they do.
Yeah. So bringing this back to your support system, if you are, again, evaluating your professional or personal support system, let's expand this now to even think about your family, who you live with, who your friends are, whoever that is. If you're not getting the emotional, strategic, or structural, or the right sort of instrumental support from these networks that help you not just develop or know what your next steps could be in your career, but help you develop these softer skills, is that really a support system?
It's a very good question. Well, I think
the
short answer is no. Yes. And the support system is not just to tell you how great you are, right? It's also, there are like 2 aspects to that. The support system serves also as a kind of a corrective mechanism for you as well. It's this external perspective that you often lack to have, right?
Yes.
And again, the more external it is, the better. Like if it's someone that doesn't live with you, someone who can just observe how you come across, right?
Yes.
What is it that you represent yourself? Someone who's not connected to you at work, someone who doesn't compete with you is important. But it's also important that those people correct your irrational self-criticism, because you might be bringing yourself down without realizing it. Someone who can help with the doubts that you might be internalizing. So that external validation is not, it's just essentially self-correcting your own emotional and your state and your thinking habits that you might have. That might be a limiting factor. Because most people don't realize that the reason that they cannot progress is not on the environment, it's on them. Like it's your responsibility to get things right, and it's your responsibility to understand what the reality of the game being played is. What about support in personal life outside of workplace? Because that can have an impact on your career progression as well.
We rely on our friends and family. We can share that something great happened at work, or we share that something horrible happened at work. And sometimes, yes, you just need to vent. You just need a sounding board. You want to share and not really receive any advice or feedback. And that's okay if that's what you're seeking. But I think a support system in your personal life is maybe even more critical, because those people really would know you and your preferences and your personality in a different way.
In a different way.
So, yes, I think we probably tend to, oh, this happened at work, or this didn't happen at work, so-and-so said this, or whatever it is, right? But then we don't really lean into that support system the way that we could, knowing how well we know our families know us. Your friends and family would be a great people to start with, to try and introduce this idea fast, because they could help you just be the sounding board for what you're trying to do, or what you're thinking of changing, or help you really see who you really are and how you come across.
Yes, and that's an interesting one, because most of us, do not ask parents, if they're lucky to, if parents are still alive, or close family, those questions. Well, so let's start with this. So we know that personal or family support in your personal life has impact on your career growth as well, right? We know that your work is not just about what happens at work, as you just said, but it's we know that your personal stability, your personal health, your emotional well-being, and also the division of domestic responsibilities, right? If you think about this, they all shape how and if you can, how much time you can dedicate towards your career and progression at work.
Yeah.
So those need to be in place in order for good things for you to happen. Now, people wrongly also assume that all of those pillars, they will come from the same person,
Yes.
right? And we'll explain why this is really possible. And also, not all of us have the privilege. Actually, most of us don't really talk with our parents, for example, if they are still alive, about work or career. And partially, this is because we acquired this script in our brains during our teenage times, with this time of disagreement and leaving your home and starting your own life. When you at some point in life assume that everything your parents say is dumb or irrelevant, and you no longer want to listen to them. So you go into an adult life carrying that script that you acquired as a teenager, which is the right thing that allows you to become independent, but you rarely come back and revisit, right? Unless you have tools to bring that and allow yourself to overwrite this and bring in that knowledge that they've accumulated.
For the purpose of a support system.
For the purpose of creating a support system, right? Not necessarily everything else that might be wrong with your parents, right? It's actually important because these are people that will have a certain perspective, but they also know you in a way that no one else does, right? So being able to get elements of that and use them when you create your own, let's say, feedback system that we talked about before is important.
Yes.
So, okay, so those 4 pillars need to be in place. And we know that what happens in your personal life impacts what happens at work, right? We know that without this personal support that is necessary to manage your burdens that you're carrying by yourself, that again, they might happen at work, but they're, things like grief, illness, right? Things like parenting challenges that you might be facing, your relationship-related stress. They all have impact on your mental well-being and on your cognitive load. So if this support network does not exist, and we're talking now purely from the career development point of view, it will have an impact on how you sleep, how you concentrate, how you eat, how you solve problems, how you make decisions, how motivated are you, right? So it's important to get that right. And most of us often don't put energy, time, and money into getting that support system in place. Or they assume that they can get everything from their partner, for example, right? Which we know it's not going to be the case.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be. It's almost impossible to get, again, the emotional, structural, and...
That's the thing. It's impossible.
Strategic support from one person. Or
especially from someone that you sometimes also need to support. I think a good example is that, so for example, when you need an emotional support from someone because of your high stress work environment, if your partner, let's say, is able to provide that type of empathetic emotional support, they will not be able to provide support in other pillars that we just outlined, purely because they are the personality required to provide that input is different, right? So when you talk about emotional support, and then let's say sharing domestic responsibilities, and then building, let's say, financial safety net for you, and for it's important for career progression, or someone who is motivational and encouraging, those things are rarely found in the same person. Someone who is emotionally supportive might not necessarily be logically and organized enough to provide you with, let's say, provide you with a financial safety nets, right? It's simply different type of skills that's required. If someone is very encouraging and motivational, might not necessarily be the best person to be systematic enough, or, for example, to take care of the domestic responsibilities, right? But that's the most frequent mistake that people make, or the assumption that they have.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I think emotional support isn't just coming home and talking about your day and then it goes nowhere, and then having these repeat conversations, right?
Yes, and it depends on your personality, right? There will be people who need to offload and share.
Of course.
Because that's their way of coping. But your partner might not be receptive to it, or your partner might not be able to provide you the support that you need, or might simply not be a person who would do the same thing. There are some people who process information better on their own, right? It just depends on your personality. So you shouldn't expect, again, it's not something that you should expect, but from your partner. You just simply need to know what your partner can offer, but you need to be able to build and find the remaining elements somewhere, right? Whether this, again, through external mentors, through extended family, or through friends. But it's important that you carefully choose and build that system for yourself.
Yeah. The original question was, what is the biggest obstacle to your professional growth? And if someone reflects on this and thinks it's a lack of a support system, because it's also, we haven't touched on this part, but it's absolutely true that trying to advance and do things completely by yourself is also very difficult, and not unsupported professionals will struggle with a lot of the things you outlined as well. So if someone is feeling or they think that their lack of advancement was because they don't have the right support system, could be true.
Could be.
So it's completely okay to rebuild it and build it in a very deliberate way. I think it starts with awareness of yourself. Where do you want to go professionally? We're talking about professional advancement. You're in a certain role. You have certain aspirations. Where do you want to go? And are the people in your current circle of support helping you emotionally, strategically, or structurally, or not?
Or dragging you down?
Or are they actually bringing you? The opposite
because career progression is a resource-consuming task, or a set of tasks to do, right? It requires extra effort, extra time, and extra money. You need to study, you need to network, you need to attend events, right? Because that's where things happen. You need to take additional assignments, right? So that will have an impact on your family life. There's just no other way. And you need to understand when you make that decision on progressing your career that something needs to give. And you need to build yourself that framework in which that will help you to deliver these things, right? Now, and that personal support, and people often don't think about this that way because it always goes back to the resources, to the time, energy, and money that you can give to things, right? Because that's a finite pool of resources. And for example, people sometimes understand that a situation where time and energy are scarce is, for example, a single parent household, right? Which is true. But it's no different in terms of the toll it takes on your time and energy when you have, let's say, when in a dual career situation, right? Or when you're thinking about career progression.
Right.
The impact that it has on your relationship when that decision is made by one of the partners will put a strain that is comparable in terms of time, money, and resources at the time that is needed to grow as if it would be a single parent household. But those realization of that, right, that there will be a new set of competing priorities that will have an impact on other things, a knock-off effect of other things, is rarely something that people take into account. They think, oh, I will just now progress in my career, right? Well, okay, who's going to support that?
There's consequences.
And how? And those things need to be actively built. Right? Yeah.
And built, but also frequently revisited too. So ask about even small steps or small changes, whoever it is in your support system. Think about who can I rely on for objective, honest feedback? Is there someone that you could call today? Or is there someone at home that you could say, I need your support, this is what's happening, and you would feel or think that you're getting what you need? Who are you around the people in your support system? Does something about the way you think change? Does something change about the way you conduct yourself? What kinds of questions you would or would not ask with the right people in your support system? So if any of the answers to those are unsettling or they don't align with where you are going or what your values are or what your priorities are for your professional growth, and maybe those people are maybe you need to just re-audit who's in your support system.
Yes, because you're talking about a situation right now where somebody actually has someone like that who will give you an honest input into yourself. And the truth is, most people struggle to find a person like that who will give them a valuable information about themselves.
Yeah.
The other thing is what people do with feedback, because don't forget, like, feedback is just an opinion about someone else on you.
Yes, right.
Which is valuable for the purposes of self-awareness, but it's not necessarily something that the identifying, let's say, certain gaps is not necessarily something that you immediately should start addressing. This is just something to make you aware of certain things, where your gaps might be or what your strengths are. And again, that's a completely different topic, which we have covered and probably will cover in the future. But feedback is for self-awareness. Feedback is not for you to suddenly start changing things about yourself. One, it's probably not going to happen. Two, even if it does, the amount of time and effort you need to put into this is typically more than you can, than you will be able to manage. Without that support, they will default into things that will not only not move them forward, actually will drag them down, right? They might take less fulfilling jobs or jobs with less development opportunities for financial security, right? Because that doesn't exist in their personal life. They might avoid high risk and high reward roles as well for the very same reason, right? Because being able to do that requires a strong existing support system, both professionally and personally. They will miss certain opportunities in the same way, right? If you cannot put time and energy and money into again, the things that we talk about, some things will simply not happen for you unless you have system and resources.
And clarity on where you want to go.
And clarity of where you're going to go. But clarity and prioritization, we know that's a big thing. We're going to cover this in our next episode.
Yeah.
Shall we summarize? What's the most important thing when you talk about, what would be the most important thing that we would tell to someone who says, well, I struggle with this, with lack of support, and it has a negative impact on my career growth? What would be the most important takeaway?
So, right, what are you actually relying on the people around you for?
Yeah.
2 would be, you can always modify who's in your circle.
Yes.
And that's not a selfish thing to do, because you are also giving them your time and energy, maybe even your money as well. So you're always balancing resources within you and your circle. So if a mentor or a boss, a colleague isn't really aligned in the circle that you need because of where you want to go, change it. And then once you realize who you need, then start asking the right questions to identify the people that will be allowed into your circle. So the first thing, who is in your network? The second thing is, choose the right people, because they might not be who you think they are. The third one, don't rely on someone else to create that system for you. This is your responsibility, and it's going to cost you either your time, your money, or your resources, or your energy. Anything else? And start today.
Start immediately, otherwise you're just wasting time.
Start auditing today.
Yeah. If you get those 3 right, you will move your career forwards. Yes.
Thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, share with your favorite brain.